I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we explore a gripping journey through history with an amazing author. His name is Karl Berger, and he has penned a powerful book. It is called The Wound Closest to the Sun. This compelling novel spans generations, weaving together the tragedies of 1919 Bavaria, World War II France, and 1960 France. Through the haunting story of Yann, a journalist burdened by regret and his connection with a German soldier's son, the author delivers a masterpiece of historical fiction and human emotion. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Brookside Press for helping us put him in the spotlight today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. And Karl joins us today from the Maple Staple Bookstore in Toronto. Karl, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me and giving me that chance. So let's talk about the book first, about The Wound Closest to the Sun. Actually, it's a quote, a partial quote from René Char, who was a French resistance fighter. And that is very much on my mind, the whole problem of post-war Germany. And I grew up in post-war Germany, born in 1941. So I have some very faint memories of the Second World War, the bombing of Munich. And then I grew up rather undisturbed in the suburbs of Munich. And what happened is slowly it dawned on me what terrible history I came out of. And it dawned on me that I never really talked to my father about these things. And that's the whole generation problem for Germans that are born at the end of the Second World War. We just closed our eyes. And then we began, once we grew up in our 20s, then we began to wonder about these things. Now, my way of dealing with it is obviously I began to write novels about it and deal with it that way. And the Wound Closest to the Sun goes, I have a French citizen who was born in 1897, Yann, and I follow him through all the Second World War until 1961. So we basically follow his life. And he wants to be in the First World War, but he's too young. And then he participates in these civil wars that happened in Germany after the First World War. And his life is saved by a German soldier, 1919. He's about 21 years old. And he meets again, by coincidence, he meets that same soldier again during the occupation of France in 1940. And they're making almost a friendship, almost. But it doesn't come to it because the Germans are occupying, and Yann picks up the problems that the Germans have. They prosecute the Jews, they put them in the trains to Auschwitz and so on. And then they fall in love, both of them, the German and the French, fall in love with a French girl. It's not going to work out because she joins the resistance. So everything is in there, resistance fighter. And at the end of the story, actually, Yann gets to know the son of the German soldier, because the German soldier is now in his 60s, he dies, but his son, he develops a friendship with the son. The son develops a love story with a girl in France. So there's a love story in there, there is history in there, there's failure in there, because there is a lot of failure too. In 1961, he is Yann looking back at his wife, not quite satisfied at what he did, but he's okay. So I just packed it all into the description of a life of one person.
No. The guilt you described, or the bad feelings that you describe after World War II, growing up in Germany and around Germany, was that a common feeling for people of your generation, that you wondered what happened during World War II and what happened during the rise of Hitler?
I think after the war, there was so much destruction that people just had to survive. And it's an interesting thing that awareness that there was something wrong here, basically, came 1961 with Eichmann. You remember that Eichmann was kind of taken out of Argentina by the Jews because they found him out that Eichmann was responsible for the killing of millions of Jews. And he fled to Argentina. And the Israelis got him out of there. At that point, 1961, the Germans got suddenly aware that the Israelis were going to kill a German citizen. And this was justified. It was a shock. And at that point, I remember very well that Germany got acutely aware what has happened. Mass murder on a scope that is unparalleled in history. So, but before there was denial. And I wrote another story. There is a book that made it before the one that we're talking about. It's called Clipperton. And Clipperton is the story about a young German who finds documents on an island. It's called Clipperton. It's in the middle of the Pacific. There's nothing there about his father's involvement with Auschwitz. So it's again a adventure story that is actually built around the basic problem. Yeah. So and it is just the fact that I think this is the message I can give. I'm at the age now, there are not that many people left that have indirect knowledge of the Second World War in the sense that their fathers were involved. Yeah. And we never asked our fathers. We never asked.
Yeah. And my father was in World War II. I never asked him about his experience there either.
Really?
I think it might have been a generational thing that you didn't talk to your father like that back in those days. I think it's interesting. All countries have wars at one point that are controversial. I mean, for example, the United States is supporting Israel in Gaza right now. And some people might say the United States has blood on its hands, or in Ukraine, or in Russia. So as soldiers, you do what your government tells you to do. You're told that other people are enemies, other people are heroes. So in many ways, a lot of the soldiers of World War II in Germany were just following orders and doing what they were told was the best thing for their country, right?
Yes, that is the big controversy. Well, this was what the Germans always told us. I mean, the former generation, our fathers. We were just told what you were supposed to do. But there's an aspect of the Holocaust that is different. Yeah. And because it was industrialized, it was organized to a point that no other mass murder was organized. They put them in trains. They noted the numbers down. They put stars on their clothes so they could identify them. That has not happened ever before. So when there is talk about genocide in other respects, but there's the aspect of industrialization, organization of mass murder was just perfected by the Germans. That's the danger. That's different. That's different from whatever is going on in the world right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's not only the scope.
Right.
So.
Yeah, exactly. The scope of what they did, the way they industrialized it, like you said, they made killing a business, and the killing was not of soldiers. The killing was of civilians, and one type of civilian, primarily Jewish people, which of course is why it's such a dark chapter in history. Turning now to your book a little bit, Madeleine's death is pivotal in the story. Tell us about how her influence lingers in Yann's life in the story.
She dies, this is the heroine of the story. She dies, she wants to attack a German column of tanks, and she needs some machine guns. And the machine guns are not provided by the protagonist. That's his failure in the novel. And so she dies as a woman that is in the French resistance. That's I think that was your question, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But let me say another thing. The industrialization of mass murder made it easier to people who participated to close their eyes because it's machinery.
Yeah.
They were part of machinery.
Yeah.
They were not individuals. Oh, no, we're just part of it.
Yeah.
That was very dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Camus is a big part of your story as well. Camus, the philosopher and writer, Albert Camus, is part of your story. Tell us about how he adds to the philosophical overtones of the story.
Philosophical, but you mean the scope of it was unheard in history, and I hope it's not going to be ever repeated. Yeah. The way the people relate, I wrote actually 3 novels. The first one was Clipperton. Clipperton is the story of a young guy growing up out in Germany, a German, who finds out about the guilt of his fathers in a very unusual place. But he always knew there was something wrong. We always, the whole generation, knew there was something wrong, but we couldn't put our finger on. We didn't want to put our finger on. It's called denial. It's just a human thing. You don't want to know about it.
Exactly.
And so in the second story, it's more a story of German-French resistance. And it's a love story, too. Actually, in all 3 books that I wrote, and the third one is going to come out sometime in the future, it's on some level, it's boy gets girl. It is there. But it is just part of the story. But the real core of the story is the guilt that these fathers put on us, on the next generation.
Absolutely.
Or the kind of the feeling of there's something wrong.
Absolutely.
So,
Doctor, before we leave you today, is there anything you'd like the audience to know? Anything you'd like readers to take away from your work?
Oh, still with the acoustic. I apologize. Say again, please.
What would you like readers to know? What would you like them to take away from your work? What meaning would you like them to find in your novel?
If I take a very practical point, my psychiatry friend in New York, he put his father on a table, put a tape recorder in front of him and say, you talk. Make your father talk. Make your mother talk. It might apply even now. In Europe, they always kept things away. I didn't know I have a half-brother until I was in my 40s. They just kept it away. That was the European problem. Now talk to your father, talk to your uncle, talk to your mother. Give them uncomfortable questions. It's okay.
Absolutely.
That would be the core of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's a great advice. Have that conversation with your mother. Have that conversation with your father. Find out their history. The name of the book we've been talking about today is The Wound Closest to the Sun. It is a compelling novel that spans generations, weaving together the tragedies of 1919 Bavaria, World War II France, and 1960 France. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much. I'm very delighted to talk with you.
Delighted talking to you as well. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time, this time until next time on
Thank
Spotlight.
you very much.
Thank you, Doctor.